but you got to remember why we did it. And I still firmly believe, and so does our founding group, our investors, that this was the right thing to do. And
from what started as a group of ranchers believing they needed to be more than just price takers in the cattle business to an elaborate idea of building a multi-million-dollar packing plant.
That's what happens in agriculture, right? Like tough times make tough men, and then we innovate.
Trey Wasserberger returns as our guest to update us on the progress of Sustainable Beef LLC, as it's now less than 3 months from opening the doors on this newest packing facility of this size. We'll talk about the things that have changed since they broke ground, like inflation, cattle numbers, and the higher markets, plus a discussion on their collaboration with partners from farm to plate, one specifically being Walmart.
Well, I'm not doing business with Walmart. Well, I hate to say it, but there's probably a chance you already are.
It's now more than a pipe dream and definitely more than reality, boys. This new packing plant's gonna happen. Sustainable Beef LLC on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here with you, and we're glad to have you joining us on the program today. As you heard there in the opening, Trey Wasserberger joining us back here again. I always look forward to visiting with Trey, not only hearing about what's going on with that huge endeavor that they're underway with Sustainable Beef LLC, that packing facility there, and all of the collaborating partners in that, but also just hear from his thoughts and ideas as a young producer in the ranching business. So I think you'll enjoy that conversation that we're going to have with Trey. Also coming up later on in the show, of course, the Captain Tim O'Byrne will be in for this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents, but we're going to have an extended version of our weather with meteorologist Don Day, a segment dedicated just to that. With all of the cold weather and the crazy weather we're having here now, I thought it'd be good for all of us to maybe get a little bit more in-depth weather across for looking out not only for the end of this month, but even later on in that, and what that's looking like in different parts of the country. So be sure to tune in later on in the show for extended weather segment with meteorologist Don Day. Now, it is the season for a lot of national conventions and, might I say, also stock shows as well. I know Cattlemen's Congress just wrapped up down in Oklahoma City. The National Western Stock Show in Denver is underway. The Black Hills Stock Show will be coming up the latter part of this month and into February. And then we get into the big shows in Texas in February, San Angelo and San Antonio. Then into March, we have the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo Austin in the middle of March. So 'tis the season for all of these kind of events. So make sure you partake in all of those, and of course with our national associations, be a part of those as well. The American Farm Bureau Federation having their 106th convention coming up in San Antonio, Texas, the end of this month, and then into February 4th through the 6th, also in San Antonio, will be the 2025 Cattle Convention, and I'm looking forward to being there. And of course, all the crew from the Working Ranch magazine will be there, including the captain. So be sure you stop by and say hello to all of us. We look forward to meeting and greeting with y'all, and don't forget to pick up if you don't have a copy of the latest issue of Working Ranch magazine, you can find one there at the booth as well. So make sure you stop in and do that. Now, finally, before we go here and talking about upcoming conventions, and that is coming up in February 9th through the 13th in Spokane, Washington, will be the 78th annual meeting for the Society for Range Management. And if you want to find out more information about that, you can go to their website at rangelands.org. Now, here's something I want to point out specifically, though, and that is the 2025 Producers Forum, which is going to be held on the 10th of February as part of this whole convention. Here is the lineup for the Producers Forum. Get this: Alan Savory, Alejandro Carrillo, and John Lundgren. So I think you're going to find that in itself going to be something that you're not going to see every day. Now, I say all of that to also mention that Alan Savory, we're looking forward to having him here on the show as well, either next week or the week after. So be sure you listen in here on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Appreciate Dave Voth with Good Grazing Makes Sense initiative to help us get that set up and that interview set up with Alan Savory here on our program. But make sure, if you want more information about the Society for Range Management's annual meeting, you can go to their website again, which is at rangelands.org. Well, let's turn now to our subject at hand. And joining us here is Trey Wasserberger, rancher there, also owner of TD Angus and co-founder of Sustainable Beef. Trey, good to have you back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good to hear from you again, Justin.
Well, as you and I were talking before we started on air here today, it was almost a little over 100 episodes ago when we talked, and the title of our podcast then was From a Pipe Dream to Reality, and we're knocking on the door of reality of sustainable beef.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. No doubt. I mean, it's hard to imagine what we're almost 4 years, and some of the founding groups even 9 years into this process. So it's pretty amazing that here we are talking about a startup and turning the lights on. So we're excited.
So just in general, and we'll get into maybe some specifics about it. How has it went from when we talked last in 22 to now? Because it was just, I don't think even ground was broken at that point in time, but from then until now, generally, how's it went?
Oh, I mean, where do I start? I mean, the process. So we talked about the kind of the startup of the company, and at that point, we were just moving dirt. We moved 52,000 loads of dirt. Pretty cool here in North Platte, Nebraska. One of my bull customers and neighbors and good friends got the dirt contract, and we were laughing. And you'll understand this, Justin, from your geography location. But the best cross on an Angus cow is, people argue with you. It's a Simmental bull, or it's a Hereford bull, or a Shar bull, a really good Angus bull. But the best cross on a cow is a black oil well that goes up and down.
Yeah, I knew you were headed there.
That's supposed to be the best cross on an Angus cow. And my bull customer said, Trey, I've always wanted an oil well, but selling sand is pretty dang close. So that was it was kind of cool. We've had a lot of economic impact for our community. We've shattered all kinds of building contract and permit records. I mean, we're nearing at $500 million on this facility. And yeah, it's look at the environment. In 2020, we started this company because of packing capacity, and 3 main cattle feeding families got together and wanted to make some change and have somewhere to harvest their own cattle. And so we did it. Now we're at the lowest, fast track 4.5 years later, almost 5 years later. And the cow supply, I heard this morning, is the lowest it's been since 1952. But that's what happens in agriculture, right? Like tough times make tough men, and then we innovate. And usually we're out of the cycle by the time you start up, whether it's buying a ranch or building a feed yard, buying that pivot at a good time. Most of the time when you get in production, it's a tough time. So this is no different in the cycle. And sure, inflation and inputs and everybody out there and wages and everything's changed. It's a different social environment. It's kind of funny. I had a call with the USDA yesterday, and I was dealing with Trump's administration when we first started this process. And then I was dealing with Biden's administration with the USDA. And now I'm going to be back to Trump's. I mean, and it's all new faces and it's a fresh new look, but that's just how long it's been. We've dang sure had some hurdles and some tough times and interest and inflation and inputs. But I'm proud of this team and proud of this company and proud of this community for getting it off the ground and, from a dream to reality. So. Yeah.
Trey, how do you handle that? I mean, in a way, and it's mainly maybe probably what I'm asking is, how do you handle this psychologically, mentally, and, between yourselves and other shareholders, knowing that it is a long process? As you said, we're now on to the third administration, coincidentally, 2 of them being the same president. But how do you guys work through this and keep calm in all of this? Because as you had said, when this first started and the idea of it, it was back in the COVID days, and things are a lot different than they are in COVID. So mentally, how are you dealing with this?
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking outside my office window after warming up, and this is my own fault, but I'm calving in January in -2 degrees. So, and I did that to myself, and I have to say that I did this to myself as well. And don't believe me, I've sat there and laid awake and stared at the ceiling fan in the middle of the night thinking, what have I done? What have I created? But you got to remember why we did it. And I still firmly believe, and so does our founding group, our investors, that this was the right thing to do. And we see it every day in our community. I went over lunch. I hauled into town and listened to our mayor, who had just been elected at the time. And we said, hey, it wasn't even publicly acknowledged yet. We said, hey, this is coming across your desk. Good luck. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is the largest economic impact west of Kearney of all time, and it's coming to my community, and it's going to change our community. And he's rolled with the punches too. And he said, man, we've shattered building permit records. You just drive downtown North Platte. It's cleaned up. Construction permits are through the roof. That's why we did it. I mean, the talent, we're in the process now. We've got our general manager. We've got our plant manager. We've got our 5 main hires underneath them. We've got a controller, a CPA, CFO, whatever you want to call it. We've got an HR manager and her team, and the talent, especially young talent we're bringing into North Platte, Nebraska, is incredible. Our general manager, Ryan Wagner, has spent his whole life in the packing industry. He's a country kid born on a ranch in western Oklahoma. He brought 3 young daughters with him to town. They've really, really embraced them into our community. And those girls, they're not only just great human beings, but one's a hell of a babysitter. We found out it's been a fun ride. And I told him the other day, I don't know if you're our best decision we've ever made. That seems to be, we'll see what that looks like in 5 years. But to me, it looks like you're one of the best decisions Sustainable Beef's ever made. So it's cool. I mean, we're just rolling with the punches, and every day. And let's be serious, we're producers just like everybody else. And we just like breeding that cow in April when it was sunny and 65. There was a good chance it wasn't going to be that when she calved. Yeah. And we know that going into it. And so we understand that what's in front of us, and we just put our nose on the grindstone and get through it. So,
Trey, I want to take a break here, and when we come back, I want to talk about the collaboration between the different entities that are a part of this. Also, I want you to kind of refresh us on the technology in the plant compared to what older plants were at and what we were able to do because it's a new build and not retrofitting something old, and just some of the things I want to talk about when we come back here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Sounds great.
And this segment today brought to you by Apex Cattle's Heterosis Headquarters Annual Sale. That's going to be coming up on Monday, January 27th. Mark your calendar. Sale time is going to be set for 12:30. Now, if you can't make the sale, don't worry about that because you can catch that on cci.com. But talking with Dan Leo the other day, he's proud of what they have to offer this year. Nearly 300 head of outstanding Sim Angus cattle. Included in that is about 140 head of very good, powerful 2-year-old bulls and some exciting new generation yearling bulls, all these with exceptional EPD profiles set for calving for performance, maternal, and carcass genetics. And he told me, he said that a lot of these are sired by EPD leaders on very highly productive Angus and Sim Angus dams. A lot of these bulls bred and developed with this in mind: longevity, good feet, and soundness, and that's what you need in a bull. A lot of these older bulls, aged advantage bulls, on a no-grain ration. Now, in addition to the bulls, also selling about 115, a little over 115 head of Sim Angus bred heifers, all these bred to proven Cavanese low birth weight sires. And then for the first time, Dan was saying they're going to also be selling an elite set of open heifer calves, in addition to a few fall pairs. So with all of that in mind, if you run a good set of Angus cows or a purebred commercial operation, these Apex Sim Angus bulls will impact your program, putting more pounds out there to sell and also better females to retain. Now, if you'd like more information about Apex Cattle's sale, you can go to their website at apexcattle.com. And as I said before, that sale will be broadcast on cci.com starting at 12:30 on Monday, January 27th. That sale is going to be at the Apex Cattle Sale Headquarters in Dannenbrog, Nebraska. Heterosis, don't be in business without it. Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Trey Wasserberger is my guest here today, one of the co-founders of Sustainable Beef, LLC. Also, he and his wife, Dana, have TD Angus. We'll talk just briefly about that towards the tail end of this. But at the same time, we had Trey back on in December of 2022 talking about the startup of getting things off the ground with Sustainable Beef, LLC. And Trey, as you and I, when we went to break this last time, one of the things I wanted to talk about was this has been a real collaborative effort, and a terminology that we get that I think in ranching that makes a lot of guys nervous is vertical integration. We saw that happening in the pork industry. We saw that happening in the poultry industry as well. And when we start looking at the cattle industry, there's some concern with that. But the terminology I've heard is not really integration because we're talking completely different types of species and investments in those species. So it's not even a 1-to-1 ratio in that fact. So when we look at the cattle industry, it's been more about, okay, these entities can't really be in all elements, but they could be collaborators in that. So talk about where we're at with that, because I know one of the biggest things that came out was the collaboration with Walmart in there as a minority shareholder.
Yeah, 100%. You just said it right there, Justin, with collaboration. This isn't vertical integration because our minority investor in Walmart, the largest buyer of American beef, does not own the cow-calf process, and nor do they want to. And could they? I mean, we're talking we've done the math and the data. There's literally tens of millions of acres that it's going to take to service this 400,000 head packing plant.
Yeah.
Tens of millions of it. It would take the largest landowner multiplied by a ton to service this plant. And no one's got the capability nor the equity. I love the Warren Buffett quote. Like, Warren Buffett, how come you didn't vertically integrate the beef industry? He said, because I don't have a large enough borrowing base.
Yeah.
One of the richest guys in the world could not even vertically integrate the beef supply chain because it costs so much money to do it. And so that says a lot. And I've said this with producers, and we sell 500 bulls a year all over the country, 30 states last year. And I have this conversation at their kitchen tables. I'm like, whoa, no one wants your job. And today, no one's going after your job, nor do they want it, nor do they have the capabilities to do it. You are a part of a supply chain today, whether you like it or not. Your beef, I'm looking out there, I just saw a heifer calf right outside my window. One day, she or it is going to enter the supply chain. Now, these are registered C stock, but still they will enter the supply chain. And where they go, there's a very good chance. I've had some customers and producers be like, well, I'm not doing business with Walmart. Well, I hate to say it, but there's probably a chance you already are. Yeah. There's probably a chance that your beef is going to a large feed yard, and it's going to a large packer and sending up in a box beef chain and going to the largest retailer in the USA and in the nation. So we are a part of that. It's just a rare, and there's no blueprint for what we're doing. And so there's been struggles, no doubt. We're trying to make everybody profitable along the supply chain, and that's just not how the beef industry works. We're always stealing margin from each other, right?
Yeah.
The feeder's trying to steal it from the cow-calf guy, and the packer's trying to steal it from the feeder, and the retailer's trying to steal it with the packer. And so we've had to figure out, instead of stealing a piece of the pie from each other, let's make the pie bigger. And it's been a revelation. It's hard. And like you said, like, you can't type into Chat GDP and say, how do we make this work? I mean, even AI can't figure this out, which is terrifying. Yeah. So it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's where we're doing it, and it's every day. It's a new process. And if we pull the wagon together, we're figuring out that, yeah, this is doable and it is sustainable.
Trey, I want to talk a little bit about this collaboration. And I think in order to understand, as you had talked about, the millions of acres that it would take to service this particular plant in what it is and the size it is. And just some real quick questions here. I know it's out there for everybody to see, but just to refresh, what's the per head per day that you're planning on this outfit?
Yeah, we're going to try to process. I mean, in the first year, we're probably not going to get there on a ramp-up schedule, but by 2026, we hope to be harvesting 1,500 head a day, one shift, day shift.
So 1,500 head per day. About how many employees?
Boy, 850. Okay. 850.
Okay. All right. So what do you figure is the percent of, or do you have any numbers as far as this plant's impact in our industry as far as the number of livestock and those kinds of numbers? What I mean, maybe I'm not asking the right question, but you get what I'm saying is like, what's the impact you're going to see it make in the industry?
So this is the economies of scale and how big the beef packing industry is, and it's controlled by mostly 4 Fortune 500 companies. We're going to harvest, hopefully in 2026, 400,000 head a year. It's like less than 1% of the total kill. That's insane. 400,000 head. It's going to take 16 million acres to service us. And we're going to be 1% of the total harvest capacity in the U.S. That's insane. Yeah. But we are 2% in Nebraska, and it is $1 billion impact for our community. Yeah. So we're just working with different figures, right? I'm a simple rancher. I was talking with you earlier about the price of hay. Yeah. And we're beating each other up over 150 to 160 delivered. You know, just add a zero to it, and that's how big the beef packing industry is. And it's hard to imagine, but we are gonna be buying cash on our live cattle on the cash market. We are gonna have buyers out there, and we're a new guy on the block. We understand that we're a very, very small regional packer, but we will have impact because we have, for the first time in decades, we actually have a corporation and a startup in the beef packing industry that is new. Mm-hmm. It hasn't been in the beef packing industry last year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago. We're new. We're fresh. And that's going to help the 5-weighted average on beef prices, and we're proud of that.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I asked you those questions is to I think that brings into perspective how many $1 million project this was, and when there's concerns in our industry about vertical integration, you're right. Multiply these numbers, and that was just at a 1% impact in our industry as a whole. So that was kind of the where I was headed with that question. Sure. Okay, so let's talk then about with this being a new build, what you were able to do with a new build versus retrofitting something that was already established or an older plant that's been in existence for 15, 20, 25 years.
Right. So it'd be really the first plant in the Midwest, born, greenfield startup from the ground up, literally, in a long, long time. And thankfully, COVID was a hard time. It was a hard time on our industry, and it was a hard time in the global economy. But it did teach us something, and it taught us we need to spread this deal out. Mm-hmm. So our exits and enters are different. They don't go in the same deal. Our locker rooms are way bigger and way more spacious. Even better than that, and the fab floor and the kill floor, we're 4 to 5 feet apart. Our employees will be 4 to 5 feet apart, and they'll not only enter that way, they'll exit the other way. And that's unheard of today. Instead of being elbow to elbow, we're 4 to 5 feet apart. Our packing plant is 550,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's huge. Mm-hmm. And you go outside and you're like, you guys are only going to harvest 1,500 head here? Yes. Cooler space, we can only handle so much. So yes, we are. Why'd you build it so big? Because we think it's healthy for our employees. We think it's healthy for their families. It's healthy for our community and just their morale, right? Like, everybody wants a corner office, right?
Yeah.
And have room to, that's why we sell pickup trucks and Suburbans in the Midwest like you can't believe. We want room to run. Mm-hmm. And we're proud of that. And we are accepting applications and resumes today. And when we launched it about a month ago, we were averaging about a resume every 5 minutes for a week. It was great. And we have had some open house tours for people inquiring about positions within the plant that are already working within the industry, and they all say we love the layout. Mm-hmm. We're not crammed. We're not on top of each other. It's not a chutes and ladder kind of diagram. This is great, and we love it. And we hear that all the time. So it's a much different plant, very well spread out, very well spaced, and everybody's got their own room, and our employees are going to benefit from that. Mm-hmm.
All right, Trey, let's take another break here. And when we come back, I want to talk specifically about, on your website, the first thing you see is beef is about to get a whole lot greener. I want to address that because I think in our industry, we have different perceptions of what that means or what we're trying to achieve or who we're trying to please with that statement. And I want to talk about that when we come back. Now, I don't know if you remember this. A few weeks back, in fact, I think it was the first part of December, Jordan Steele of Ranch Management Consultants joined us. We were talking about year-end preparation and management of your books and things like that, looking ahead into 2025. Now, I asked him this specific question because it's actually something I have a lot of conversation about or hear it from time to time within the rancher circles as well, and that is, what are folks using for accounting software out there? Now, he had mentioned Ambrook was a new accounting software that some folks are moving over to. Well, here's the deal. We're past the 1st of January, so it's probably time to get serious about wrapping up 2024 and start looking into how you're going to manage your books for 2025. So now's a good time to maybe look at this. And if you're tired of trying to find and gather up all your receipts or get them out off the desk or off your dresser or whatever you do, and sick and tired of maybe messing with spreadsheets or even QuickBooks for that matter, it may be time to join America's Ranchers on Ambrook. In fact, a couple weeks ago or so, I met with the team at Ambrook and they gave me a tour of the product. It works with Schedule F and C right out of the box, making tax season quite simple. And it also enables you to track where you're making and losing money with profit and loss by enterprise. That's important, location, and more. Look really easy to get set up and get caught up. And here's the other thing. Their support is based right here in the United States. So if you have questions, you can call in. And it's also folks that understand agriculture. So if you're ready to take control of your books here in 2024, 2025. Why don't you give them a try? Go to their website at ambrook.com/ranch today. And with that, you can get a 30-day free trial courtesy of all of us here at Working Ranch Radio. Again, that website is ambrook.com/ranch.
Capitalize on crossbreeding with Geldvieh and Balancer bulls. Raise replacement females with added fertility, increased longevity, and greater productivity. Geldvieh and Balancer influenced females wean more pounds of calf per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer influenced cattle offer increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and have excellent carcass merit. Balancers add the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. Make your crossbreeding count with Geldvieh and Balancer genetics.
Welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Trey Wasserberger is my guest here today. And Trey, a lot has happened since you and I first talked, as we continue to see, and just 90 days or so before things start up with Sustainable Beef LLC. And as we talk about the plant, as you were talking about the design and function of the plant in the last segment, one of the things that is different now in our industry, in our society, in our world that we're dealing with now is how do we, as the ag industry that has typically always maybe been at odds with the environmental movement, now finding that, okay, there's some of those folks that are our customers. How do we meet in the middle on this? When I go to your website, it says beef is about to get a whole lot greener. And you've got folks from different angles within our own industry that might say, okay, I get what you're going at here. I understand what you're meaning here. And then others saying, well, you're just trying to cave in. So your thoughts for our industry when I see something like this?
Yeah, great question. Never been asked it before. I just pulled up our website to make sure. I hadn't even noticed it, to be honest with you. So here's a raw, unfiltered. Here's unedited. A raw, unfiltered question. Yeah, unedited. So as a producer, right? Like as a beef, what am I? Am I a packing plant guy? Am I a feed yard operator? Am I a cow calf guy? The answer is yes. What's that mean to me? And when we started this sustainable beef, right? Like you're putting a target on your back already, and we do have to answer these questions. And I ask this to producers all the time: what does sustainable mean to you? And I spoke at the Iowa Cattlemen's Convention, and everybody in the room almost had a different answer.
Yeah.
But and I always say this, and I said this since 4 years ago, and I take this from founder and mentor and partner in the plant, Pete Lapisotis, and sustainable to him is profitability. Mm-hmm. So what is, if you're going to be sustainable and you are going to have longevity, which we're all multi-generational here. We want to, our kids to come home and do what dad did. No doubt. That's always the goal, and have it a little easier than we had it. We got to be profitable. Mm-hmm. And I talked about this all along in the supply chain. Everybody from the cow-calf guy to the consumer has to be profitable. Greener to me, beef is about to be a whole lot greener. Greener to me means profitability. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, as a consumer, are you pulling that up? Does that mean something different to them? Sure, maybe. But don't confuse yourself, producers out there, that you don't think that the consumer is paying attention to how, if we're being conservationalists, mm-hmm. if we're being regenerative, if we are taking care of the environment. They are in tune with that. No one's got more data than our partner in Walmart, who's the largest buyer of American beef and wants all the choice and prime we can bring to them because they want to sell it, because the consumer wants it. What they want to know, you're taking care of the land too. They love the multi-generational story. That picture on our website, those are my kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, running around the Nebraska Sandhill green pasture, that cow with the bull calves next to her, beef is be a whole lot greener. Those are my cows. That is a love language that we do play to because we're marketers. Mm-hmm. Our job is to sell beef. Mm-hmm. I'm a producer. My job is to increase demand and increase consumption. Mm-hmm. So tell our story. You just brought it up. The internet, social media, Facebook. So, it's free and everybody can have it. And worse than that, sometimes, or better, everybody's got a microphone. Yeah. And it's our job as producers to portray what we're doing on our, we are taking care of the water. We are taking care of the ground. We are taking care of our stock, and we couldn't be here without the ground. And that's all we're getting at there. Is it I love that saying, actually, and it kind of makes people kind of shift and, I don't know about that. It makes us uncomfortable, right? Because it means different things, but it does resonate to our consumer.
Yeah.
And that's important. That's our customer. I hear people, I don't want to do business with them. I don't think about them. Like, sir, you're raising steer calves. They are going to the supply chain. Your customer is the consumer, and you do need to speak their language. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If we want to grow consumption, we want to sell more beef, we have to do what the consumer wants, and they are paying attention to that, and that's something that obviously is not going to go away. It will not, has not.
Yeah. Greener
to me is profitability. Greener to the consumer is different. Greener to the packing plant is different. But green to me means profitability as a producer, and that's who I am.
Trey, two questions coming from this that will kind of finish up our conversation here today about this. And number one is, when I see that, sometimes I think some people that maybe look at this and say, well, they're caving it a little bit. The perception might be is that beef hasn't been greener.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of arrows, right? Mm-hmm. Man, this digester stuff going on in feed yards and in dairies to sequester carbon is insane. Mm-hmm. And it's all basically government subsidized. I can say this about our company. The former administration came out and said they recognized that the beef capacity was a problem in the packing industry. And, where they came out and said, we're going to do something about that. We're going to give out some grants and some subsidies to all these startups. This company has received none of that. If you think we're being pushed or we are owned or controlled by that portion of our administration, the answer would be no.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to say that today, that we have not accepted nor given. We have never had any kind of federal subsidies for a project, which is amazing because I'll just get political. That administration and inflation and the inputs to build this packing plant was their fault.
Yeah.
It wasn't ours. And we ate it and we suffered it and we still got through it. But we are not owned by them by any means. We cannot follow any of their guidelines whatsoever. We are our own entity and our own partnership and co-op of producers, and we're still producer owned, and we're proud of that.
You bet.
We're very proud of that.
Okay, so in regard to that, as you were saying, being producer owned and kind of you guys, your own thing and not being under the control of anybody else other than how you wanted to choose to build this, what were some of the things that you did in the build of this new plant that make it more conservation minded in everything that you're doing?
Yeah, we got one of the biggest things that comes to mind right off the bat is we're right between the North Platte and the South Platte rivers here in North Platte, Nebraska. And so there's a lot of water, and we are actually right at the water table. It took a lot of dirt to fill dirt to get us above that. But what a blessing, right? Why are we here in North Platte, Nebraska? Because we got cattle and corn, which all live off water. Mm-hmm. Better than that, we have one of the most regenerative water sources in the entire country about water regeneration. And we're going to reuse a lot of that. I can't put a figure on that because we really don't know. Yeah. It's untested and unproven, but it's a lot. And we're very, very proud of that. We have a brand new city wastewater treatment that we're going to flow into that'll be clean. Oh, man, from our scrubbers to odor control, from AI technology and automation within the plant for safety of our employees. It's incredible. There's nothing like it. Wayne Schmeckley Brothers Construction there in Fort Morgan, who is building the plant for us, has proudly and publicly said, I don't speak for him, but he has publicly said, this will be the nicest and most efficient and well-run plant in the world when I'm done with it. And I believe him.
Yeah. Well, I know for all of us, I think we're really looking forward to seeing this up and operational. And I just commend you guys. I mean, I know it's a long ways. I'm not trying to pat your back before there's a lot of water that still has to go under the bridge as this goes. And you know it and I know it. But at the same time, to get from where you started to where you're at today is a huge achievement. And so I think, I commend you guys on that.
Well, we appreciate that. We appreciate all the rural and ag support. Everybody knows we've had to make some difficult decisions and do some things to get this off the ground and get it in production. And it wasn't hard, but we all go through that every day in our everyday enterprises and from ranches and farms and feed yards and whatever else. We all go through it. But that just tells you the audacity that this is producer owned and producer driven, and it is a majority. And you got to respect everybody that's involved with sustainable beef for having the intuition and the resiliency to get this off the ground. So I'm pretty proud of them, and they deserve all the credit.
Well, Trey, before we leave, I do want to mention, I know you guys, you and your wife, Dana, and your 4 kids, you got your sale coming up on the 21st of March. It'll be the 2025 bull sale there at the ranch for TD Angus at North Platte. Just real quickly, some information on that.
Yeah, absolutely. My family and I, we also have a feed yard as well, and we try to buy back these high-performing, highly efficient, high-gaining, high-marbling Black Angus cattle, and we know what we are. It's really cool. We are conception to consumption, and I'm building the bulls that I think that we believe the consumer wants. We have a high attentiveness for conversion and feed efficiency, marbling, and more important than that, tenderness. We're figuring out with the consumer that, absolutely a high prime steak that's overcooked and tough, they'd rather have a select steak that's tender. It's crazy. So let's pay attention to that. And we believe that our cattle will perform not only as cows in the ranches all over the western United States, but those steers will come in here. We'll feed them through our family feedlot, and even cooler than that, tomorrow one of my best customers is selling his steer calves here in Nebraska. We're scheduling these calves that are out of our bulls for our packing plant to enter, the first producer-owned supply chain in the beef industry, and we're really, really proud of that. And we want to work with good, honest, hardworking, genuine people so we can deliver that and increase demand and increase consumption. And so March 21st, really cool weekend for North Platte, Nebraska. We're going to sell about 400 bulls here at TD Angus at Risher Ranch at the most of the best. And then March 24th, Justin, we're going to cut the ribbon on the packing plant.
Oh, wow.
So pretty big weekend in North Platte, Nebraska. And we invite all to attend, and we'll have tours all that weekend as well. And we're really excited. So reach out to us anytime, tdangus.com. We're also on Facebook. Appreciate everything.
You bet. All right, Trey. Well, I thank you so much for taking the time here today to give us an update on it, and wishing you guys the best as you get the ribbon cutting and things going on this plan. I know there's still a lot of road ahead of you, but you've sure covered a lot of ground so far.
I appreciate it. Put me down for episode 297.
Okay. You bet.
2 years from now, and I bet I'll be a lot smarter than I am today. I guarantee it.
That sounds good.
I'm going to go through it. So
we'll mark it down right now. All right. Thanks, Trey.
All right, Ray. You bet. Thank you.
Trey Wasserberger joining us here on the program today. I always enjoy visiting with him on so many different levels. Of course, hearing an update on what's going on with the new packing plant, Sustainable Beef LLC, and it getting up and going here in just a few short months, but also just his enthusiasm and progressive mindset and thinking when it comes to the cattle industry as a rancher himself. And so I always find that exciting to listen to and hear his philosophies on so many things. And I hope you enjoyed our conversation that we had here today with Trey. This segment today brought to you by Calf Catcher. And here's the captain, Tim O'Byrne, with more.
Hey everybody, Tim here. We're fixing to come up on 1 million downloads of our Working Ranch radio show podcast, which is really exciting. And it got me to thinking about another viral moment that we had back in 2017 when we ran a short Facebook video of the Safety Zone calf catchers. And it was so popular, it got 6.8 million views in the first 5 days. I want you folks to check it out, Safety Zone calf catchers. It's a great product for all producers. Keep you safe when you're working with baby calves, especially for old-timers like me who maybe can't outrun those cows anymore. Check them out, Safety Zone Calf Catchers.
Calving season is a favorite time of year, but along with that special time are dangers, extra stress, and increased labor. Safety Zone Calf Catchers are all about safety and making processing new calves easier. Designed for ATVs or UTVs, one person can do the job and never be threatened by the protective mother cow. Make this and every calving season safer and easier with a Safety Zone Calf Catcher. Watch videos and customer testimonials or order yours today at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914. Affordable and made in the USA. Make your upcoming and all future calving seasons safer, easier, and stress-free. Durable and designed to work anywhere you can drive your ATV or UTV. Order online at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914 today.
Well, before we bring in meteorologist Don Day with a look at this crazy cold weather we've been seeing across many portions of the country. You know, with this cold weather, especially this time of the year with guys calving, the guy's going to be calving, you want that cow to bounce back after she is calved out and be able to rebreed this next year. And if you want to improve your herd's health, simplify your feeding routine, Smart Lick low moisture tubs are a pretty good answer to doing just that. Self-fed, weather resistant, and convenient, Smart Lick is packed with everything that cow's going to need to balance her diet, support weight gain, and improve her productivity. Smart Lick, it's not just another tub, it's a dependable way to get results. You can find a local dealer by going to their website and finding out where their dealer is located at smartlick.com. Again, the website is smartlic.com. Well, standing by now is meteorologist Don Day as we take this extended look at our weather. And Don, like I said just a moment ago, it is crazy weather, and this cold that we're seeing is really widespread across most of the country.
Yeah, it's not every winter where we get such a large-scale Arctic outbreak like this. You kind of have to have all the stars aligned, so to speak, but we certainly have seen that. And we're seeing the nation having one of its coldest Januaries in quite a while. This is especially true from the Rockies east all the way to the East Coast and all the way to the Gulf Coast. I mean, the far southern parts of the United States, this is their second snow event this week that they've seen this month. They don't get two in a year a lot of times. So, yeah, it's certainly quite remarkable. And this is a pattern that I think we should expect more of, although I do think that the center of the coldest temperatures relative to average for the rest of January into February will have more of a westward bias, the western side of the nation. But we're going to find that the first 2 months of the year for most of the lower 48 will be colder than average.
Mm-hmm. So let's kind of just fundamentally set this up. And I know you explain it from time to time, but let's fundamentally set this up and what you're seeing that's bringing the extent of the cold weather, because it's beyond just what we see here. I mean, there's stuff that's going on, at the top of the globe that's formulating this in a pattern that's setting things up to set this pattern on us.
Yeah, and what we've seen is a shift out in the Pacific, and we talk about the Pacific all the time, but as we got into the middle to the end of December, we started to see that the La Nina pattern that we have along the equator, those cold sea surface temperatures, had started to really moderate off the coast of South America. At the same time those temperatures were moderating and La Nina was weakening there, we saw the northern Pacific start to see an increase in sea surface temperatures. Now, we're only talking about like 2 or 3 tenths of a degree Celsius. It seems really, really minor, but over a very, very large area of open water, those little changes make a big difference. And historically, when the North Pacific starts to get warmer in January and February, coinciding with that weakening La Nina, that's caused the high pressure ridge, which was over the western half of the nation for November and December, directing the coldest weather to the east. That high pressure ridge now wants to be out over the water, off the coast of British Columbia, off the coast of California, up into the Aleutians. And what that does is that just realigns where the cold is able to go. Mm-hmm. So instead of the cold being directed and deflected more into eastern Canada, the eastern United States, it's found a track further west. And a further westward push of that high pressure ridge also allows the southern plains further south to the Gulf Coast to be susceptible to these cold waves. Mm-hmm. So the Pacific is started to change, and it was the changes that you and I had talked about in the fall, which was once those changes initiated, the weather patterns across North America would start to change. It's just a slow process, but it's here now.
Yeah. So as we start to see this much colder weather, we've seen some pretty good precipitation up till now, up to basically where we're at here today. But when we start getting into this deep cold, will there be much precipitation that comes with it?
Well, when the Arctic dominates, you're not going to get very wet because the Arctic is a very dry place. And what you need is that Pacific moisture to somehow get into the action. So at least here in the short term, no one's really going to get a lot of precipitation. Now, the exception might be closer to the Gulf Coast where some of that Gulf Coast moisture can come in. But, one thing that we've seen in this pattern is that if the Pacific isn't involved, you're not going to get a lot. Now, what tends to be a good way to bring heavy snow to parts of the United States is when you start to mix in a little bit of Arctic and a little bit of Pacific.
Okay.
And that's something at the end of this month and into February, I think we'll start to see, where you don't maybe have the Arctic outbreaks as severely cold, moderated a little bit by the Pacific, but that moderation of the Pacific also means more moisture. So I am concerned that it could be tough sledding, all puns intended, for folks across a lot of the central and western United States in terms of a lot of winter, a lot of cold, and more opportunities for the snowstorms to get a little more intense.
Mm-hmm. Now, you had talked about the fact that you see this further out. Like, how far out are we? When you say you see it is it rest of winter, or just how far out in this for these areas that you see winter really hanging on?
The signals that we see out in the Pacific are very strong through February.
Okay.
So I'm pretty confident to say it's the next 6 weeks. Now, once we get into March, boy, you're looking at that March timeframe is when we naturally start to get more stormy anyway, as those lower latitudes get more sun and start to warm up, but we still have that big contrast between the south and the north. And so if, historically speaking, if you're a cold, snowy February, you usually don't have a warm, dry March. So I would say that March has got some signs of showing to be a very busy pattern, especially for all of the U.S., but I think especially the West.
Okay. Now, just a couple things that you had talked about, and I wanted to, first was talking about this deep cold weather, and there's not a lot of precipitation in it. However, it's where we start maybe in a little bit more of the southern latitudes. So then that brings about, where there is moisture and cold weather, potential of ice storms. What are you seeing with that in the southern part of the country?
Yeah, there's the real potential for snow and ice across the deep south. You're going from the east part of Texas, the Gulf Coast of Texas, and parts of Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky, into the Carolinas, are all going to be susceptible to ice and snow with these outbreaks. I mean, could this upcoming week, could a snowflake be seen in the panhandle of Florida? Yeah, it's possible.
Okay. All right. Now, one area that's not going to necessarily see the precipitation is the southwestern part of the country. Of course, that brings into context some of the conversation of the fires that we're seeing out in California and the winds that they're dealing with. But just talk a little bit about the weather in the southwestern part of the country.
Yeah, well, this La Nina that we had developed this summer and fall into November and December is just a classic signal for it to be dry in the desert Southwest, and that includes Southern California. So it's not unexpected that they're dry and will stay dry. What is likely going to happen if we go back to the weakening La Nina, the weakening La Nina will start to allow systems to track further south. So as we get into February, March, and April, that part of the country, I think we'll see the rain and snow come back.
Okay.
But for the rest of this month, I think it's going to be hard. They're going to be cold. I mean, if you're going to be cold in Arizona, you might as well have it, get wet.
Moisture. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You might as well get moisture with it.
There are a lot of unhappy snowbirds right now, and they're going to continue to be that way.
Yeah. Well, come on. You can't have every single year just perfect. So, okay, real quick before we head out, you referenced it a few times, but just give us an update in the latest with La Nina and or I guess I should say the water temperatures in the Pacific.
Yeah. So if we look out in the central part of the Pacific Ocean, the La Nina there is still very robust, and it showed it reached its peak just before Christmas. And when I say reached its peak, means it was the largest and the coldest area. If you were to measure the area of cold water along the equator there between South America and Australia. So since then, we've started to see it weakening on the east end, just off the coast of Chile, just off that west coast there. And what will happen through the course of the weeks ahead is that little warming trend off the coast of South America will work its way slowly westward. And by March and April, we'll be in what we call that neutral status or La Nada. And so as long as we see that trend continuing, the trends that you and I just talked about should hold.
Okay. So just real briefly or real quickly then, so if we hit that neutral phase, that La Nada in this mid-spring or spring part, what's that telling us? What's that telling us for spring and early summer?
That means that a lot of the dry parts of the central U.S., let's talk about Nebraska, let's talk about parts of Wyoming, parts of the Dakotas and Montana, and then the desert Southwest. That's good news for those areas. Those areas should start to see precipitation return to normal levels. Mm-hmm. And the rest of the nation, the best thing you can do if you want to put a forecast with a neutral phase is that people will trend to their averages. They'll trend to what, if you look at the 30-year average for precipitation and temperature, that's usually where you go.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Don, thank you. I know we went a little longer today, but I wanted to because we do have pretty significant weather across the country. We're just kind of getting through, a very, very significant cold spell in the mountain, Montana, Wyoming, Dakotas. So just kind of wanted to spend a little bit more time here today and appreciate you giving us an update.
Sure thing.
And again, that is meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. If you want to find out each and every day his perspective on what the weather is looking like, you can go to his website at dayweather.com and find a link to his YouTube channel. Stick around. The Captain Tim O'Byrne with this weekend's edition of Tim's 2 Cents is coming up next.
Fascinated by our wild weather? Now you can learn, appreciate, and understand the weather in your own backyard with the new Tropo rain gauge. Having achieved the highest rating of any product reviewed by the weatherstationexperts.com, the Tropo boasts rugged durability, impeccable accuracy, and precision to the 100th of an inch. Visit measurerain.com to order a Tropo today and use code RAINDAY. That's RAINDAY for free shipping and 10% off. Go to measurerain.com.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody out there in Working Ranch Radio Land. Don't have a whole lot of time this morning, Justin. We are putting the finishing touches on the March 2025 issue. It's going to be another good one. Lots of great photographs in Working Ranch magazine. That's what I really like about it. Great, authentic photographs, good captions, and really good stories about the folks that are actually out there doing this for a living. And those supporting you good folks out there that are doing this 24/7. Already starting to see some cabin images show up on our Facebook page. And then as soon as we put the lid on this March issue, we got to head off to San Antonio for CaliCon 25. We have a nice 10x20 booth there. Hope to see so many of you good folks show up and visit with us. Booth 2010, 2010. And that's all I got for you this morning, Justin. Back to you in the booth.
All right. Thanks, Captain. Appreciate the update there. And I tell you what, no rest for the weary with the folks there at the Working Ranch magazine. Seems like they just got the January, February issue kicked out, and now they're already working on the March issue. But a lot of that is because it's a busy time of the year, as it is each and every year as we get these winter months. As I said earlier on, a lot of the associations and having their national conventions and so forth. And of course, the stock shows that we talked about earlier as well. Bull sale season, we've been talking about that quite a bit here on the show. In fact, mark your calendar coming up on the 1st of February, the 12th annual Stockman Source Bull Sale. Jeremy Martin and Travis Chrisman have been doing that for several years now, but their sale coming up on Saturday, February 1st. A good set of Angus and semi-Angus bulls set to sell there. That's just 20 miles south of North Platte, Nebraska. For folks across the country looking at different kinds of bulls, there you go. Check it out online. You can go to their website at ssbeefbulls.com. And again, it's the 12th annual Stockman Source Bull Sale coming up on Saturday, February 1st. We'll put a wrap on the program after this. For the Working Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. We thank you for joining us and tuning in on today's program. By the way, if you're listening via podcast, leave us a rating or a review. We would sure appreciate that. Be sure to tune in next week at this same time, same place. I'm Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.